Hello, this is Eva from the podcast The Charm of It, and I'm recording a tutorial or video demonstration on how I use my nostepinne to wind yarn. This is the second time I'm recording this. The first time I was just holding it in my lap instead of over the table, and the focus was terrible. So hopefully the focus will be better now at my kitchen table. Unfortunately, I can't get my kitchen window to shut. I live in an old building, and the window is stuck right now, so hopefully I'll be able to edit out any background noise. Okay, so this is for hand winding a center pull cake, and the yarn I'm winding is 100% Jacob from West Yorkshire Spinners, and I've just dyed it with Kool-Aid and Wilton's icing dye, in case you're going to wonder. So here's my nostepinne, and mine has a little groove. I'm not sure if they all do. So to start it, I wrap the yarn a couple times in the groove, and then I create a half hitch loop, which is just, so here's the end, and here's the working yarn, and you cross the end over the working yarn so that it's an X. Then you put the end under so that it looks like this, and you hold this loop while you draw the working yarn tight, and it secures it without any kind of knot. So that's how you start, or at least how I start. Then I do a few wraps and just kind of push them all together, and this is forming the base of the center pull cake. So you just need a little bit of yarn to be able to wrap around. So once you've got that going, now you're going to start wrapping. And I'm sure most people do this, but I turn, the nostepinne is going towards me. So it's being rotated like this in my left hand, not like that. And then I'm wrapping the yarn with my right hand, and I'm making an X. So I come up from beneath, and I go over the top. So I'm turning the nostepinne towards me while wrapping the yarn away from me. So this is the wrapping motion. And then in order to make a cake, you have to do both those things at the same time, so that the place that you're wrapping the yarn is constantly moving. Oh, I need more yarn. Oops, sorry, this is not where I normally set up, so my Swift needed a little more space. Okay, I've got some yarn now. So the yarn is going away from you, and the nostepinne is going towards you. And as you can see, that makes an X. There you go. So you can see the X is starting to form. And just in case it helps to see it closer, oh, we've lost focus again. So I always start by just doing that basic motion. And you can do this motion for the entire skein of yarn, but in that case you won't have a cake. Instead you will have like an egg, basically an oval ball that's going to be thicker in the middle and thinner out at the ends. It will be a center pull though. He said the wrapping method is exactly the same with a toilet paper roll, but the beginning is obviously a little different. Well, anyway. So you can use a paper towel roll as well. I don't own paper towels. I only use rags for everything, all the house cleaning and everything. So for me, it's toilet paper roll or nothing. And the first thing you want to do is fold one end flat, and you want to make two slits. You can either use scissors to make a slit. So you can see, I don't know, I'm really bad at estimating short lengths. Is that like an inch, 2.5 centimeters? Or you can just rip it. Both work, depending on if you have scissors handy. So pretend that this is a skein of yarn. I'm just going to use the same yarn. We don't need these anymore. The first thing you do is take about this much yarn and push it down toward the bottom of each slit. So now it looks like this, and you've got this. Then fold that yarn back over, and you can put a finger in the loop if you're worried you'll lose it. And so now there's a loop on one end, and just tuck the rest of the end inside the cardboard tube. And it will be there waiting for you to finish winding, and you'll be able to pull it out. So that's going to be the end that you pull from when you finish the center pull ball. And then now you do the same wrapping that you do with the nostepinne. The one difference for me is that obviously I hold this a little differently. So I rotate the toilet paper roll around my pointer finger. So wrap like this. And snug it up again, and then you can start wrapping crosswise. And now you're at exactly the same point that you'd be if you were following the nostepinne directions. I will say that for me, I find this more comfortable. If you have pain issues like I do, there are times when I can't use the nostepinne, but I can use this because you don't have to really grip it the same way you do with the nostepinne. So there are certain advantages to using toilet paper rolls other than the obvious that it's frugal and it reuses things. So it's nice if you're an environmentalist, but it can also be more comfortable. So, yep, and this is how I wound my yarn over toilet paper rolls until I received my nostepinne for Christmas last year, and it makes the exact same type of cake. They both work really well. I just like the cakes because they sit flat. And my cat is very good about not chasing yarn, but if it's a yarn ball and it falls off the couch, suddenly it becomes prey. So yarn cakes are just easier. Okay, so once you've worked up a decent amount, and that will vary depending on the thickness of your yarn. As I said, this is a DK weight, and so it's growing pretty quickly. If it's a fingering weight yarn, it's going to need more wraps. But once you can start to see kind of an egg shape forming, then I switch to making a cake. And so what you've been doing up to now is always putting the yarn a little further and a little lower and then a little higher. And that's what's making it grow vertically. In order to make a cake, you need to be wrapping at the same place each time. So I use my thumb on the top and I think this is my pointer finger on the bottom of the nostepinne, and those are my two guides to keep the yarn at the bottom from going too low, and then for the top I can just eyeball it. If I have problems with the yarn, it's always going to be the top one. And as you can see, once I get more yarn, it's the same motion as before. You're just putting the yarn in a slightly different spot. And it will start to come out at the top and bottom and begin to match the middle and get that cake look. So I am going to, I'm going to do this quickly, well, more quickly. I'm not used to doing it at a table, so that I can show you the next stage of what I do. So I will probably be back or do some kind of fancy camera editing if I can figure it out to speed myself up. Oh, and then before I speed myself up, I just wanted to say that when you first start switching, that's going to be the trickiest part. Because once you've done it for a little bit, you've got that bit of thickness at the base, so then it's much easier to have your guide finger and thumb there. So persevere for those early wraps. It's already starting to form a cake shape. Okay, so now you've got or I've got, a decent amount of thickness to that cake. So it's poofing out a bit. And so at this point, you want to step back, and I have found that if I wind the cake to be quite short, of course, then it's thicker this way. And that tends to be less stable than if you wind it taller, longer, and so then it doesn't poof out quite so much. So you want your cake to be significantly longer. The reason why I wrap a mini cake inside first is because I find it makes pulling from the center more easy at first, because, I don't know, it leaves a little more space on these two ends. But anyway, so once you've got a decent amount of thickness, maybe 1 centimeter, ½ an inch, then you just go back to the same wrapping you did at the beginning, which is more like an egg. So you're still, I can't have my Swift on my right side because of the way my kitchen is set up, so it has to be on my left. That's why I have to keep pausing to pull yarn. Usually the Swift just is on my right, so I don't have to pause. Okay, so as always, you're turning the nostepinne towards you, and you're wrapping the yarn away from you. And this is the exact same method that you do with a toilet paper roll as a nostepinne. The only difference is the start. So I'll show you how I start a toilet paper cake at the end of this video. But other than that, all of the other details are the same. So I will come back when I've got an egg that goes to about here and about here. Okay, so now we are back to an egg shape. We have lost our lovely cake, but that's okay. We're going to get it back. And as you can see, it's much taller than it was before. I don't go right to the end before I switch, because usually my cake ends up growing a little bit in length. So that's what, less than an inch, I would say. I'm not sure. And with the nostepinnes, you can always move it up and down if you don't have it quite centered and you need more space in one direction. The other thing you can do if you realize you've gone too far is just squish it together. I mean, you know, it's yarn. It's squishy. It's pretty forgiving. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing we did before and switch over from wrapping the egg shape to wrapping a cake. So let me get some more yarn. And so here, once again, I've got my forefinger for guidance at the bottom and my thumb for guidance at the top. And I just kind of eyeball the other end. And you start wrapping that way. Now obviously I'm sure that some people probably hold it down here and spin. For me, I just need that thumb and forefinger guidance to keep it even. So that's why I like to hold it quite close. And obviously I don't really worry about whether all the crosses are lining up with one another perfectly, as long as it's looking like a yarn cake. I'm not really that fussed. This is about how your top should be looking, where it's wrapped pretty evenly. Obviously a little messy, but not too bad. And then that's how the bottom looks. And actually this is going to be the end that you're pulling from. So this is the end that sits flat. So I like that this one always turns out a bit neater. And now that you've got your cake nicely established, you are just going to keep wrapping until you're down to the last yard or so, or meter, of yarn. Okay, I am down to my last yard or so of yarn. That's what's still here. And now, instead of wrapping the way I've been wrapping the entire time, I'm just going to switch and I'm going to wrap it almost like a belt around the middle of the cake, but I'm going to have my thumb there so that the wrapping is going over my thumb. And you want to make this pretty snug. Well, I make it pretty snug. And then when you come to the end, I just move my thumb around to wherever the end is. And then I tuck it under those horizontal wraps we've just made. And I usually do it twice, and that secures that. Now you go back to your half hitch loop and you pull that end, and that releases the half hitch, and you can unwrap it from here. Of course, it's going to be. Okay, there you go. So now it's unwrapped from here, and then you just slide it off the nostepinne. And you can squish it if you want, and there's the messier end for me is always the bottom. And there's the other side that's going to sit, and just so that you can see why I wrap the way I do now to make it easier to pull, here it is. That yarn is coming out with barely any pressure at all. Let's see if I can get it to zoom. Okay, and you can see that there's quite a hollow, so that lets it come out more easily. So here I am, just barely pulling, and there's a sharp tug. You can see how much comes out. So that's why I like that method. I hope that that was helpful to you.